there are midwives practicing all around the country, even in, small towns and stuff all over Texas who they don't have the option to go to a hospital and even have their clients received or treated with any kind of respect.
So much for deciding to um, take this call with me. As I say, it's going to be quick. Just wanted to just give people some kind of education, because there's still a lot of uncertainty around your role or your title. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and start now.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so I'm talking to somebody today who actually played a very vital role in my labor and delivery and pregnancy. And I just wanted to bring her on just to shed some light as to what she does and how she plays a part in this entire thing. But before we get there to all the formalities, I just wanted to just get a little background on you and just try to find out how you ended up here in Austin.
Yeah, how I ended up in Austin. Yeah, I've been in Austin since 2011. So I guess that's almost 11 years now. And I came to Austin because I'm from Chicago. Well, I was born in Australia, immigrated to the States when I was almost 9 or 10, and then grew up mostly in Chicago after that. And then my family started migrating to Austin. My sister came here like over 20 years ago now. And then my brother moved down. And so my family has just kind of slowly come here. So this was kind of the next logical place for us to be so that we could be close to my siblings. And now my mom lives here, my mother-in-law lives here, my brother-in-law lives here, my sister, my brother, most of us are here.
So the whole family's here?
Almost the whole family.
Okay. Well, that's nice.
So that's what brought me here. I love it.
Oh, so what were you doing before you occupied this position or this role?
Yeah. My first job was I was a special education teacher. I taught high school. Probably didn't know that about me.
No.
I taught high school for a long time. All through my 20s, I was a teacher, and I lived in South America for a couple of years. I taught second grade there. I also have a master's in clinical psychology. I was a therapist briefly.
Okay.
And then from there, I found my way to midwifery.
Oh, well, okay. So I'm looking at the questions that I wrote down because I don't want to forget, right?
Yeah.
All right. So just give me a brief description of who is a midwife and what is the role of a midwife in the pregnancy/labor and delivery journey.
Yeah, a midwife the word midwife means with woman. And I think that's a really great way to summarize what we do. But a midwife so technically a midwife is a healthcare provider that provides care for a woman during pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. And then healthcare, the same care that you would receive instead of going to a doctor, monitoring health and well-being of mom and baby through the course of a pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. And then in a broader sense, I think a midwife is somebody who kind of, I see it as someone who, holds all the skills and the knowledge to make sure everything's safe, but in a bigger sense to kind of come alongside a woman in this journey that she's on and just provide the safety and the support to, a midwife, like we believe that women have everything that they need within themselves to grow and birth babies. And so our role is really just to hold the space for it.
Okay, so this is not on my list of questions, but since you mentioned hospitals, how are you guys treated when you go to support a woman giving birth in the hospitals?
Yeah, like if we take one of our clients into the hospital.
Now, how are you treated by doctors and nurses?
Yeah, well, I think we're really lucky in Austin. We have St. David's main hospital in Austin is where midwives, we all transport there if possible. And I think we're really fortunate because I am kind of benefiting from the work that the midwives before me have done for the last, decade or whatever. So the midwives here have worked really hard to build a relationship with that hospital. And so we're actually treated well in the sense that we don't meet a lot of judgment. They don't have that eyebrow raised, what? You tried to have a home birth? I mean, they understand that, our clients will transport there. We come in if we need their help. They're usually respectful. And it's usually actually a pretty smooth transition. It's still, it's still complicated. It's still going from home where, the midwife is the care provider to hospital, where we transfer over the care. The doctors and nurses are now in charge. We're not. And it's still just a very different model of care. So it becomes more of a having to accept the system that's in place and find a way to still get some of what you're looking for out of your experience, as opposed to at home, you have
control.
You have control. You ultimately have control over everything. You get to make all your decisions. I don't make decisions for you. So it's a different model, but I do think that we're lucky that we have the option to go to the hospital when we need to. I mean, there are midwives practicing all around the country, even in, small towns and stuff all over Texas, who they don't have the option to go to a hospital and even have their clients received or treated with any kind of respect. So in that sense,
Wow. So do you specifically, do you belong to a birth center, or do you work independently, or sometimes it gets intertwined?
No, I just have my own practice. I just work on my own, no birth center.
Why did you choose that route?
Home birth is kind of all I've done. I was trained doing home birth. I had my own babies at home. I have respect for birth centers. I have people have different choices, and some people, people birth where they feel safest, which is the most important thing, right? Some people feel safest in the hospital. Some people feel safer in a birth center. So that's fine. I just, birth center midwifery feels different to me. Birth centers tend to have a rotation of midwives. The relationship isn't the same as this one-on-one kind of care that we get to provide. And honestly, I kind of see leaving the home as the first intervention. And so I just believe in home birth.
Okay. And that's perfectly fine. So now it seems like over the last, I'm gonna say maybe 3-5 years, that home birth has become very popular. It's almost like it's trendy, right? And we know this has been happening since humans have been born. How do you feel about it becoming a trend, so to speak? And what advice would you give somebody in selecting their midwife?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, honestly, I feel there's that any way that home birth can become more acceptable in American culture, any way that people are able to find it to be more accessible, that it's not seen as dangerous, and any way that that can happen is a good thing to me. I would rather there be more home births than less. I mean, we still live in a country where 99% of people are birthing in a hospital. So the trend that we're seeing is still the overwhelming majority of people are not having their babies even in birth centers, let alone at home. It's still a very small percentage. But now, of course, we have celebrities that have had home births, and we have, it's becoming a little bit more acceptable. But so I feel like that's a good thing. I mean, it's complicated, right? I have complicated feelings about, this is a way of bringing humans into the world that's existed since humans are in the world. And midwives, women around the world since the beginning of humanity have been doing this. This is what we do to have babies. And so it's a little bit frustrating to me that it's, that once there's enough attention from certain people, whether they're, more white people having their babies at home, more people with wealth, whatever, more people with influence, then, it's kind of similar to that, what's that called? That tipping point that happens in school systems where like enough white people will send their kids to a school, and then all of a sudden it shifts into being an acceptable school. It feels similar to that. And so I find that frustrating and unfortunate, but at the same time, I'm glad that more people are having their babies at home. I think now the work is just to make sure that home birth is accessible to everybody that wants to have a home birth.
And what advice would you give to somebody in selecting a midwife?
Yeah. I mean, I know the midwife community in Austin. I'm not familiar with the midwifery community in other places, but we have great midwives in Austin. I think that, obviously, when people come to have a consultation, when they're interviewing midwives, they obviously ask questions about, safety and protocols and what do you do in an emergency, all that kind of stuff. But really, I always say that the birth, and I don't know if you feel this way, Roxanne, after finishing your care, but the birth is one day, right? Like the majority of the time that you and I spent together was not your birth. We spent a lot of time together that was not the birth. And so I feel like one of the most important things in picking a midwife is really just, it's the relationship. Like you just talk to someone, and if a lot of it is like the feeling that you have, like the energy, the vibe, like, does this person feel like somebody that I feel safe with emotionally? And do I feel like this person can physically keep me safe? Does this person feel like somebody that I want to spend time with? We spend a lot of time together. And so it's like, do I enjoy this person? Is this somebody that I can talk to? This is somebody that, if I'm struggling with something or I'm not sure about something, I can just say it and I feel heard and understood. I think those are the most important things.
Absolutely. Yes, we had a relationship prior to the birth, but I think I was most appreciative of you on that day because for some reason your energy was just so calming and just so relaxing and so reassuring, because as you remember, there were points where I was like, Lena, I can't do this. And you're like, but you're doing it, you're fine. And you had this little voice. I don't know where that voice came from, but that's exactly what I needed at the moment to just remind me, like, you're doing it, mama, it's okay. So I really appreciated that. And as you said, when I did the interviews, it was really about vibe and who my spirit connected with immediately. Some people go for what's popular, or if this person is the most expensive, it means that they're the best. And I don't think that's the road people should go. So that's excellent advice. So a question, with your birthings, do you think that 2021 was busier than 2020? Are more people doing, especially when in this area, having births? Was your last year busier than 2020?
No, I don't think so. I think that 2020, actually, the midwives in Austin saw a big bump in people seeking out midwifery because of COVID. So when COVID hit March, April, May, that first year, 2020, I mean, the midwives in the community were literally getting like 10 calls a day sometimes from people wanting to switch over, who planning hospital births and all of a sudden scared to be in the hospital. So there was a huge increase, I think, in people that were having home births in 2020. And then it probably evened out back to like, once people are either home birthers or they're not, in my opinion. Like someone who, is going to seek out a home birth because that's who they are, they're going to do it no matter what. And someone who, feels safest in the hospital, they might have had a little moment in 2020 where they were scared, so they consider it a home birth, but those people are going to go back to having their babies in the hospital once they see the risk has gone down and they're not scared anymore. So I think it's kind of evened out.
Okay. And do you remember how many babies you delivered last year?
I probably attended maybe 25 births last year. As far as those weren't all my clients, because I also assist other midwives. So out of my own clients, I probably had 13 or 14 people who had their babies last year. And yeah,
that's significant to me.
It's more like two to three a month, and then I like to take a lot of months off. Being on call is tiring, so I'll do a couple months on call and then I'll take a month off. Then I'll do a couple months on call and then I'll take a month off.
Okay, that makes sense. And how many of them, if at all, were delivered on their actual due dates?
Well, one was your little Naomi was. I think she was the only one.
Oh.
I don't think I had any other clients.
Oh.
Trying to think really fast, thinking through all my people. I didn't have any other due date babies, just yours.
Well, I didn't know until I got pregnant that only 45% of women deliver on their actual due date. So when I found that out, I was like, that's kind of cool. But so that's it. But I mean, I appreciate you talking to me. I told you it was going to be nice and quick. Just wanted to shed some light because, as I said, when I told a lot of my people that I was doing a home birth with a midwife and everything, yes, they're familiar with the word or the term, but they just weren't clear as to what your role or your position was. And they were like, what if something happens? But we spoke about that and we had all the contingencies in place. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to go ahead with it because it felt safe. And then, of course, you know how I feel about hospital being Black and an immigrant. And so that's just wasn't going to happen. But I appreciate it. I appreciate all of you. I even appreciate the lady that showed up last minute. Was Kristen was the
assisting midwife. Yeah.
I mean, I think you guys are doing some really important work here, especially for women that look like us. And I can't wait to talk to, tell me your name again.
Ulrika. I just talked to her this morning and she said she would definitely jump on a call as well. So I'll just text with you we'll schedule it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. You're a part of that as well, right? Or
she started as a GoFundMe in 2020. She just started a GoFundMe. She and I are like very close friends, and she was like, "Hey, do you want to help me with this?" And I was like, 100%. And so I just jumped in with her, and we've been doing that since. And then in early 2021, we filed for nonprofit status. We became a nonprofit. So that's her baby that now I am a part of. It's the two of us. And
I'm so excited. I can't wait to start contributing. Can't right now for obvious reasons. But every chance I get, I tell people about it and I share it because it's so important.
That feels like the biggest, financial contribution. We're looking for financial contribution from bigger organizations, right? Like we're trying to write for grants this year. And like, I want companies that have big money to contribute. I think for people like just everyday regular people who are trying to, live their lives and have their families, what I'm really looking for that's the most helpful is what you're doing is just sharing about it, talking about it. When we talk about it, I find when I shared it in the beginning and now as I, talk about it more, I find that people just don't know, right? Like people don't know what is happening to women who look like you in the hospitals, and they don't understand why. And even when they find out that it's happening, then they have assumptions about like, oh, maybe it's socioeconomic status, maybe it's lack of education, maybe it's lack of healthcare, maybe they don't know what's happening. And then the next level is once they realize all of it, I'm finding that it's really hard to get people to care enough to do something, like not just be like, oh, wow, that's really terrible. But like, no, it's not just terrible. It's a crisis. Women are dying for no reason, and it's unacceptable.
I think it's like most things where if it's not on their doorstep or they're not being affected by it immediately, it's almost like it just doesn't exist. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to link your page and the Black Birth Matters ATX. I'm sure I just butchered the name. I'm going to put it down.
Black Homebirth Matters ATX.
Black Homebirth Matters ATX. I'm going to put it down in the description so people just follow and just become aware. And as you said, just share it because that's where it starts really. Because again, it's very important.
Homebirth Matters ATX last year, you were one of 17 women that had home births at home last year through the fund. And that's awesome. And we're hoping our goal is for twice that number this year. So we're hoping 35 families at least, like home births, successful.
I think it will happen. I am going to try my hardest to get the word out there. I think it will happen for sure. Because what you guys are doing is just so important. Well, I appreciate it, Lena. And I'm going to see you again. Well, for now, anyway.
I know, but we will see each other again. Love you, Roxanne.
Thank you so much. Love you too, Lena.
All right. Bye.
Bye.